Isabella kneels with her hands pressed together in prayer, her face serene yet glowing with anticipation. She has the honor of sitting in the front row of the Sunday Mass, with Vittorio seated directly behind her. She has never looked more radiant, her immaculate white tunic accentuating her delicate olive complexion. As the liturgy of the Eucharist begins, Isabella rises from her seat, her heart pounding in rhythm with the solemn hymns. Accompanied by 2 boys of her age, she walks reverently toward the altar, every step measured and filled with purpose. The congregation watches in hushed silence, witnessing this sacred rite of passage. Having gone to confession the previous day and fasted since, Isabella is spiritually prepared for the moment. At the altar, the priest raises the consecrated host, his voice echoing through the church as he utters the holy words. One by one, the children kneel before him, their hands clasped tightly in prayer. When Isabella's turn comes, she tilts her head slightly back, closing her eyes in reverent surrender as the priest gently places the body of Christ on her tongue. She crosses herself with a solemn gesture of devotion and gratitude, then rises and steps aside. This simple yet profound act marks her official welcome into the Church of God, a moment that seals her place within its spiritual embrace. Back home, Vittorio has prepared a celebratory feast, one that rivals any they've had before. Every detail reflects his pride in Isabella's milestone. A perfectly roasted lamb takes center stage, accompanied by sides of fine bread, rich cheeses, fresh seasonal fruits, honey cakes, dried fruits, candied almonds, and a small flask of mead. Isabella marvels at the spread, savoring each bite and silently wondering if this is how the wealthy eat every day. The thought flits across her mind before it's lost in the indulgence of the moment. As she nibbles on a honey cake, one of her favorites, Vittorio rises from his seat and retrieves a small object. Holding a delicate silver cross on a silk ribbon, he turns to her with a smile. "For you," he says simply. Isabella's eyes widen, her mouth still full of cake as she gazes at the shimmering gift. She stands slowly, her fingers gently nursing the cross hanging from Vittorio's hand. After swallowing, she whispers, "Thank you, Uncle. It's so beautiful, so shiny." Vittorio steps closer. "Let me," he offers, and Isabella leans forward, her heart swelling with gratitude. Vittorio places the necklace gently over her head, adjusting the ribbon and pulling her hair free so it rests comfortably against the back of her neck. Isabella's fingers immediately find the cross, tracing its fine details. The tiny figure of Christ carved with care into the metal. She realizes with awe that this is her very first piece of jewelry. Vittorio bends down and places a soft kiss on Isabella's forehead. They exchange a warm smile. No words needed to convey the shared emotion of the moment. Then, with unspoken contentment, they return to their seats and continue their meal, the silver cross catching the light and sparkling softly against Isabella's chest. Life moves steadily forward, and Isabella, now more confident, often ventures deeper into the streets of Padua during her free time. Gradually expanding her comfort zone, she explores the city's hidden corners with a curious eye. Her guilty pleasure is watching young couples interact, quietly observing the subtle gestures of affection they exchange within the constraints of their restrictive society. Small parks and riversides are her favorite spots, offering a sense of serenity and a perfect vantage point for her musings. Vittorio, understanding her loneliness, says little about her escapades as long as her chores are done, and she returns home well before dark. Occasionally, she takes a book along, adding another layer to her explorations. Among her growing library, assembled piece by piece over the years, her treasured copy of Aesop's Fables remains her constant companion, its timeless tales of wisdom and morality offering solace and reflection. But one day, her literary world is forever changed when Vittorio arrives with a new book in hand, the story of Tristan and Isolde. At first, Isabella approaches the tale with cautious curiosity, unsure of what to expect. As she turns the pages, however, she becomes completely engrossed. The tale of Tristan's unyielding devotion to Isolde and their forbidden love, filled with passion, betrayal, and sacrifice, awakens something new within her. The tragic beauty of their story captivates her, and she reads it over and over, savoring the emotions it stirs: joy, sorrow, and a profound sense of longing. It is unlike anything she has read before, a story that both enthralls and haunts her. Vittorio has always been generous in nurturing Isabella's love of reading, often bringing her books whenever he has the chance. On one particular occasion, he returned home with 3 books at once. The books had come from an elderly man, a former merchant whose passion for literature had led him to amass a collection of over 100 volumes during his prosperous years. But age and dwindling fortunes had left him unable to maintain his business or legacy, leaving his daughter to fend for herself. Vittorio, upon hearing her plight, offered to cover the full cost of the man's funeral in exchange for 3 books of his choosing, along with paper and ink. The daughter, grateful for his kindness, agreed, and among the selections was The Story of Tristan and Isolde, a treasure that soon found a cherished place in Isabella's hands. Every week, Isabella attends confession, sometimes twice. She confesses small misdeeds: spying on couples in the city, indulging in an extra cake, swearing when she tore her dress while feeding Filippo, or other trivial acts. Padre Ugolino, while firm in his reprimands and assigning her prayers as penance, senses the deeper truth. He knows that Isabella's confessions are not merely about seeking forgiveness, but also a way to share her thoughts and feelings. Feeling the weight of her solitude, he listens with a gentle heart, understanding that her visits are as much about connection as absolution. Isabella's awareness continues to grow with age, and over the past few years, she has begun to notice subtle things about her surroundings. And about Vittorio. Occasionally, she detects floral scents lingering on his clothes, faint traces of a distinctly feminine fragrance. Though she cannot fully grasp their significance, she starts to piece together that her uncle may have quiet interactions with women, a realization she holds on to with curiosity rather than judgment. For her 14th birthday, Isabella receives a new blue dress, her favorite color. Taller now, though still of average height, the dress reflects her transition into young womanhood. Its elegant tailoring and finer details hint at Vittorio's improved financial stability and his continued care for her. Vittorio, ever observant, notices how the dress garners attention from young men on their way to church, subtle glances and fleeting stares. But Isabella, blissfully unaware, remains untouched by their interest. Vittorio had always been a pillar of strength, both physically and emotionally, but this past autumn tested him like never before. A severe bout of flu left him bedridden for over a week, forcing him to rely on others in ways he never had before. The physician prescribed rest, warm soups, and constant care, and Isabella stepped into the role of caretaker with unwavering dedication. She diligently monitored Vittorio, changing the damp towel on his forehead, replacing his bed linens, and emptying his bed pot without a single word of complaint. Her steadfast presence was a source of comfort during his illness. Recognizing the strain on the household, Donato took it upon himself to find additional help, ensuring Vittorio's work commitments were not neglected. This brief but profound period of vulnerability gave Vittorio much to reflect on. He realized how vital Isabella's presence had become, her care a quiet but powerful reminder of the family he still had. In his prayers, he thanked God for bringing her into his life, even though it came at the cost of losing his brother. Yet the experience also planted a seed of unease. As he watched Isabella shoulder more and more responsibilities, Vittorio began to consider the inevitability of her own future. One day she would forge her own path and possibly leave his home. This thought brought him to another realization. Perhaps it was time to consider seeking companionship of his own, someone who could share his life. Isabella often reflected on the many gifts she had received from her uncle over the years, realizing she had never been able to offer him something meaningful in return. For Christmas, she wanted to create something thoughtful and personal, something from the heart, despite having no money to spend. Turning to craft and lacking any particular skill in that area, she decided to write a poem for Vittorio, pouring her gratitude and affection into her words. Carefully, she used one of her precious sheets of paper, taking her time to compose a full-page poem that she hoped would express her feelings. On Christmas Day, with a mix of excitement and nervousness, Isabella presented the neatly rolled paper tied with a small fabric ribbon to her uncle. Vittorio accepted it warmly, his smile reassuring her as he unfurled the gift and began reading aloud. As he read, Isabella noticed that his reading pace was slower than hers, his voice steady but less practiced. When he finished, he looked at her with sincere gratitude and thanked her deeply for the heartfelt effort. Though Vittorio's words were kind, he couldn't help but silently acknowledge, even with no experience in poetry, that her skills in this area were still unrefined. Yet what mattered to him was the thought and love behind the gift. Isabella continues attending her weekly classes, even though her writing skills have now surpassed most of her peers. As one of the oldest in her class, she recognizes that her time in school is nearing its end. The Latin lessons are rudimentary, and there's little new for her to learn, but she also understands the reality. There are no opportunities for higher education available to her, leaving her with a bittersweet awareness of her limitations. Isabella enters Vittorio's workspace unannounced, her presence catching him off guard. Vittorio is bent over the still form of a woman, carefully tending to her final preparation. Without looking up, he asks, "What are you doing here, Isabella?" "I'm bored," she replies, her eyes drawn to the woman lying on the table. Isabella tilts her head, studying the woman's serene features. She appears to be in her early 30s, with light hair and a well-formed figure, dressed in simple but elegant clothing that hints at a middle-class status. "She's beautiful," Isabella murmurs, almost in awe. Vittorio lets out a soft sigh, his voice tinged with melancholy. "Yes, it is a pity. Perhaps God called her early so she could retain her beauty in the afterlife." Isabella frowns slightly, noticing Vittorio's careful work. "I didn't know you knew how to braid hair." A faint smile crosses Vittorio's face as he responds, "I know how to do many things for the departed. I can shave them too, though that doesn't mean I shave myself often." He chuckles lightly before stepping back to admire his work. She's ready now. Tomorrow her family will say their final goodbyes. With practiced care, Vittorio drapes a white sheet over the woman's body, fully covering her. He turns to Isabella, who is still watching with quiet curiosity. "Would you like to take a walk into the city?" he asks, breaking the solemn atmosphere. Isabella's face lights up at the suggestion, her earlier boredom forgotten. "I'd love that," she says, smiling brightly. Easter is approaching. Vittorio rises before dawn and gently calls out, "Isabella, wake up. We need to get ready for Mass." Isabella replies with a muffled voice, "I don't feel very well," still shaken from an unsettling night filled with nightmares. Concerned, Vittorio moves closer, placing his hand on her forehead. "You don't have a fever," he observes. "My belly aches," Isabella mumbles, her discomfort clear. Vittorio stands upright, his tone firm yet understanding. "We have to go to church today. It's important. Get ready. We need to eat before we leave." A short while later, Isabella emerges from the bedroom in her beautiful dress, though her discomfort is still evident. She sits at the table where a small slice of bread and a bowl of water await her. Slowly, she nibbles on the bread, her unease plain to see. "You need to finish it all," Vittorio says while eating his own portion. "We won't have anything else until sundown." Today is Ash Wednesday, Isabella. It's a day for reflecting on our sins and asking for forgiveness. The 40 days ahead are a time to remember our Lord's struggles on earth. Fasting will help bring us closer to Him, closer to God. Receiving the ashes today is the first step of this journey. The first rays of sunlight begin to pierce the sky, promising a clear and mild late February day. Vittorio adds, "Take a shawl. It might still be chilly this morning." "Yes, Uncle," Isabella replies softly as she rises, her discomfort still apparent. She picks up some of the dishes to rinse in the large bucket. Vittorio finishes his bowl and stands, but just as he's about to leave the table, he notices something amiss. "Isabella, what happened to your dress?" Vittorio exclaims, alarmed by a large stain. Startled by his tone, Isabella glances down, trying to figure out what he means. Shifting her dress, she can see anything wrong, as she lifts the front of her dress and sees blood on her inner thigh. Her face crumples as realization dawns, and she lets out a loud, panicked sob. Tears flow instantly, and she clutches at the cupboard for support, her breathing shallow and erratic. Vittorio rushes toward her, concerned, but she thrusts her hand out to stop him. Don't come near me," she cries, her voice trembling with fear and shame. Vittorio freezes in place, his hands raised slightly in a gesture of helplessness. "Let me help you," he pleads. "No!" Isabella screams, tears streaming down her face. "Please leave me alone. Just go. Go. I am begging you. Please, please go." Overcome with emotion and unable to process what is happening, Vittorio takes a hesitant step back. He looks at her one last time, her sobbing figure trembling against the cupboard, before retreating from the room, leaving Isabella to collapse to the floor in anguish. Vittorio tends to Filippo, brushing the horse's coat with deliberate strokes. It's a task he hasn't performed in a while, as it has become one of Isabella's usual chores. Picking up a bucket, he prepares to leave the barn but pauses when he notices Isabella stepping out of the house. She's wearing her usual clothes, her expression calm yet subdued. Remaining in the shadows, Vittorio watches as she heads to the well, carefully drawing water and carrying the full bucket back inside. Only after she re-enters the house does Vittorio step forward to fetch water for Filippo, completing the task quietly. With Filippo taken care of, Vittorio returns to his workshop, immersing himself in the precise work of cutting, polishing, and assembling planks of wood for coffin construction. Though his hands are busy, his mind is elsewhere, preoccupied with Isabella's situation. He debates how best to support her, uncertain how much of her previous time with the nuns 2 years ago prepared her for this new chapter of womanhood. He feels the weight of his inadequacies but resolves to handle the matter with care. Throughout the morning, Vittorio hears Isabella's footsteps moving up and down the stairs, marking several trips to the well. Each creak of the wooden steps is a subtle reminder of her quiet diligence. By mid-afternoon, however, the house falls silent. Vittorio pauses his work, setting down his tools. He listens intently but hears nothing from upstairs. After a moment of hesitation, he decides to investigate. Peeking cautiously up the staircase, he debates his approach before finally stepping into the main room. The space appears untouched, save for Isabella's dress hung carefully to dry, positioned far from the fireplace. Watermarks on the floor hint at a thorough cleaning, evidence of her efforts earlier in the day. Vittorio approaches the bedroom door and opens it slightly. Through the crack, he sees Isabella sound asleep, curled up with Rosso nestled comfortably against her. The cat is perfectly content to share his mistress's warmth. Deciding not to disturb her, Vittorio closes the door gently and heads back to the main room. He sits at the table, gathering vegetables to peel and chop for a simple soup. As he works, the rhythmic motion of his knife gives him time to reflect. Thoughts swirl in his mind, but one thing becomes clear. He must find a way to guide Isabella through this delicate time. Determined, he resolves to take the next steps with patience and care. This moment of quiet reflection provides him with clarity on the steps he must take next. One morning, out of the blue, Vittorio announces to Isabella, "Let's make some changes." Over the course of 3 weeks, Vittorio sacrificed a third of his storage space above the workshop and a quarter of his bedroom to create something new. 2 hired men labored diligently, erecting walls, building a new chimney, and carefully piercing the wall to install a modest glass window. Not extravagant, but glass nonetheless. Now Isabella and Rosso stand in their new bedroom, surveying the space with awe. Her father's bed and armoire have been carefully placed within the room, joined by the new window that allows light to spill into the once darkened area. For Isabella, this is more than a room. It is a symbol of change. She feels different, no longer a little girl, yet not quite a woman. There is something unspoken, an intangible shift she cannot yet define but senses deeply. As Isabella stands in the center of the room, lost in thought, Rosso curls around her legs, his tail brushing against her skirt. A sudden thump startles them both, and Isabella turns toward the door. Vittorio enters, carrying a modest but beautifully crafted desk in his strong arms. Isabella steps aside to give him space, and Vittorio sets the desk beneath the window with care. He steps back, running a hand over the smooth surface, a habit born of pride in his craftsmanship. "There," he declares. "Do you like it? I made it for you." A broad smile lights up Isabella's face. "Thank you. It's beautiful. It fits the room wonderfully." Vittorio nods with satisfaction, waving a hand as he disappears into the living area. Moments later, he returns with a sturdy chair, which he places by the desk. "Now, try it," he says, gesturing toward the seat. Isabella sits at her new desk, her hands gliding over the fine wood that still holds traces of sawdust. She opens one of the 2 drawers, marveling at the practicality and care in its construction. "Now you have your very own private place to read and write to your heart's content," Vittorio says, pride evident in his voice. Isabella looks up at him, her smile warm and sincere. "This is wonderful," she replies, before turning back to run her hands over the desk. The next morning, Isabella wakes to an unfamiliar view, the plain wall of her new room. For a moment, she feels disoriented. She's so accustomed to seeing Vittorio's empty bed to her right that it takes her a second to realize where she is. Turning to her left, her eyes settle on her desk, and a smile spreads across her face as the reality of her new space sinks in. She reaches out instinctively, her hand finding Rosso's warm belly. The cat stirs at her touch, letting out a soft sound of contentment before stretching his body to its fullest, his ears folded back in sleepy protest. With a wide yawn, he rolls over and pads toward Isabella's face, nuzzling her in his customary morning greeting. As Isabella dresses, her gaze drifts to the silver cross resting on her desk. Her eyes move to her modest collection of books, the ink bottle and paper carefully arranged on the desk, and then to her formal blue dress hanging neatly on the wall. She runs her fingers through her hair, tidying it absent-mindedly, before heading to the living area with Rosso trotting at her heels. Vittorio is finishing his breakfast when she enters. Typically, she would greet him with a polite, "Good morning," and take her seat opposite him. Today, however, she walks behind him, wrapping her arms around his broad shoulders and leaning in to kiss his cheek. "Thank you for everything," she whispers, her voice full of emotion. Pressing her forehead against his temple, she tightens the hug briefly before releasing him and moving to her place at the table. Vittorio, visibly touched, smiles and asks, "What was that for?" Isabella meets his gaze, her eyes filled with sincerity. It's been more than 4 years since you took me in, and you've been nothing but the best uncle a girl could ask for. I just wanted to thank you and tell you how much I appreciate everything you've done for me. I hope that someday I'll be able to repay you." Still smiling, Vittorio feels a lump in his throat and an overwhelming surge of emotion. He swallows hard, his voice steady but soft as he replies, "Having you as my niece is all the reward I'll ever need." Isabella returns his smile as she tears off a piece of bread to nibble on. Vittorio stands, preparing to head downstairs to his workshop. "Have a good day," she says warmly. "You too," he replies, his tone full of affection, before leaving the room. Isabella watches the door for a moment after it closes. Late summer brings a long, bright days, and after spending much of it outdoors, Isabella retires to her desk after dinner with a book in hand. The sun, still high enough, floods her room with natural light, making it a perfect setting for reading. However, a stubborn migraine has been gnawing at her since the afternoon, one of the worst she has experienced. Even her usual remedy, a steaming cup of herbal tea, offers no relief. Distracted by the pounding pain and the unsettling images swirling in her mind, she abandons her book and decides to rest. Sleep, however, eludes her, and it isn't until well into the night that exhaustion finally pulls her into an uneasy slumber. The next morning, though the migraine has subsided, Isabella feels drained from the restless night. By mid-morning, she pauses her chores and makes her way to the church, seeking solace and guidance. Inside the quiet sanctuary, Isabella sits on the third row of benches, her head bowed in prayer. Padre Ugolino, busy polishing ritual brass instruments nearby, notices her presence but says nothing. After a time, Isabella rises and approaches the altar, signaling her desire for confession. The priest, unsurprised by her request, gestures toward the confessional with a jaded voice. "You know the way, my child." Kneeling in the confessional, Isabella begins in a trembling voice, "Please forgive me, Padre, for I have sinned." "What have you done, my child?" the priest intones, his tone ritualistic. "Confess your sins so the Lord may forgive you." Hesitating, Isabella finally says, "I don't know what's happening to me, Padre. I see things, terrible things." The priest, sensing the gravity of her confession, leans slightly closer. "Tell me more, Isabella. Where have you seen these things? What kind of things?" Tears welling up, Isabella lets it all pour out. "In my mind, I see dead people, suffering, anger, violence, men and women together in ways that make me feel ashamed. I hear voices, Padre, people speaking to me in foreign tongues. I don't understand what's happening. Am I losing my mind? Are demons trying to take me away from God's path? I'm so scared and I can't tell my uncle about this. What should I do?" The priest exhales slowly, attempting to comfort her. "Isabella, you're a young woman now, and sometimes such confusion can arise. Your uncle works with death every day. Perhaps some of his work has left an impression on you. But listen to me carefully. Since you can enter God's house and feel His presence, I don't believe evil resides within you." His smile, though forced, is meant to reassure. "You are a good person, Isabella. As long as you keep God in your heart, He will protect you. This may be a test of faith, a challenge to make you stronger. Be steadfast, and you will prevail. For now, I want you to fast for 10 days. Pray 5 Ave Maria 3 times a day, and also recite 3 times the Pater Noster each evening. These acts will purify your spirit and dispel any evil around you." Still uncertain, Isabella asks, "Are you sure this will be enough?" The priest nods, his tone soft yet firm. "If it isn't, you can always return to me. I will be here for you." "Thank you, Padre," Isabella says, her voice a mix of relief and lingering fear. "I'll do as you say." Crossing herself, Isabella leaves the confessional. The priest, watching her go, mirrors the gesture but remains seated. A shadow of concern crosses his face as he contemplates the mental and emotional fragility of the young girl. Several weeks later, as the first leaves begin to turn golden and the crispness of autumn settles in, Padre Ugolino walks through the cemetery toward Vittorio and Donato. The two men are waist-deep in the earth, shoveling soil to the side as they dig a new grave. The priest calls out, "Vittorio, may I have a word with you?" Vittorio pauses, leaning his shovel against the grassy edge, and climbs out of the hole. He waves at Donato to keep working before stepping aside with the priest out of earshot. Dusting his hands, Vittorio asks, "What can I do for you, Padre?" The priest's expression is solemn as he replies, "Vittorio, I wanted to speak with you about Isabella. Is everything well at home?" Surprised, Vittorio straightens, his brow furrowing. "Isabella? Yes, Padre, of course. She's a good girl. Respectful. Hard-working. There's nothing wrong with her. Granted, she spends most of her free time in her room reading these days, but that's since. Well, you know. Why do you ask?" Padre Ugolino folds his hands, his tone measured. "Vittorio, Isabella, I believe, will soon turn to be 15. She's reaching an age where the current curriculum at the church no longer suits her. I've spoken with the monk, and he agrees. She isn't learning anything new from the classes. I believe it's time to begin thinking about her future, specifically finding her a husband." Vittorio's jaw tightens, his instinct to protest rising, but before he can speak, the priest continues, "Don't misunderstand me. There's no rush. There's time, perhaps a year or two, but these matters require preparation. I've noticed that Isabella doesn't socialize much, and so I've taken the liberty of observing our congregation to identify young men who might be a suitable match." "I'm not sure Isabella would like this idea," Vittorio responds carefully. "It's never been a topic we've discussed. That's precisely why we must start early," the priest explains. "Isabella is a fine young woman, but having spent her formative years with you, she may need a strong man to guide her. I'm not certain a boy her age could, well, handle her independence easily." Vittorio's tone sharpens slightly. "With all due respect, Padre, you know how much I care for Isabella. I want her to be happy, not forced into a situation she doesn't want. How about we let things unfold naturally? As you said, there's still time. Besides, she's innocent of the ways of men." Padre Ugolino nods slightly, though his demeanor remains firm. "Perhaps, but it's worth beginning the conversation. She spent time with the nuns 2 years ago. They've already taught her what she needs to know about her role as a woman. None of this will come as a surprise to her." The priest dismisses the conversation with a wave, signaling Vittorio to return to his work. Vittorio offers a quick bow before heading back to the grave. As he picks up his shovel, he glances at Donato, who's methodically continuing the task. Isabella steps into the confessional, kneeling and lowering her head. "Forgive me, Padre, for I have sinned," she begins softly. The priest responds in the usual ritualistic tone, "Confess your sins so the Lord may forgive you." She lists a few minor transgressions: eating an extra piece of bread, losing her temper while tending the garden, skipping a prayer, and falls silent. The priest, pausing for a moment, leans closer and asks, "Isabella, what about your dreams, your visions? You haven't mentioned them for months." Caught off guard, Isabella hesitates before replying, "I don't have them anymore. I followed your guidance, and they're gone now." "I see," the priest says, nodding thoughtfully. "That is good to hear. But there is another matter I wish to discuss with you." Vittorio is in his workshop, washing the body of a man whose life was cut tragically short. His practiced hands rinse away the final traces of the earthly realm, his expression calm and focused. Just as he is about to finish, he hears heavy, hurried footsteps thudding from upstairs. Frowning, Vittorio drapes a white sheet over the body and cleans his hands before following the source of the noise. Climbing the stairs, he feels the unease grow with each step. Knocking softly on Isabella's door, he calls, "Isabella, may I come in?" Receiving no response, he cautiously opens the door to find Isabella pacing her room, her movements restless and agitated. "What's happening, Isabella?" he asks gently. Isabella stops abruptly and sits on her bed, curling into a tight ball with her arms wrapped around her legs. Her voice trembles with frustration. "I can't believe what that old goat told me. He wants me to get married." Feigning ignorance, Vittorio asks calmly, "Who said that? And married to whom? Why?" "Padre Ugolino!" Isabella exclaims, her anger rising. "He wants me to marry some man who's 22. Can you imagine? An old man. And he tried to arrange it without even asking me." She mimics the priest's voice mockingly. "He's a good, successful man. He's a good Christian. He owns his own bakery." Vittorio watches her carefully, his heart aching at her distress. He sits beside her, his presence a steadying force. As he reaches to place a comforting hand on her shoulder, Isabella collapses against him, burying her face into his chest. Her sobs come fast and heavy as she clutches onto him, her voice breaking as she pleads, "Please, Uncle, don't let them take me away from you. Don't let them force me into this." Wrapping his strong arms around her, Vittorio rests his chin on the top of her head. "Don't worry, Isabella," he says firmly. "As long as you stay with me, no one will force you to do anything. I promise." Isabella cries against him, her tears soaking his shirt. Isabella, determined to enjoy one of the last comfortable days of the season, wraps a shawl around her shoulders and steps out into the sunlight, relishing its lingering warmth. She decides to stroll toward the university, the grand building that had opened just 3 years prior. Walking slowly past its pristine facade, she lets her eyes linger on the imposing structure, imagining the wealth of knowledge contained within. Yet, she cannot ignore the pang of exclusion, knowing such learning is unavailable to women like her. She watches as students move confidently toward the building, their books clutched tightly. Among them, a striking couple catches her attention. A young man in his prime, his broad shoulders giving him an air of authority, and a dark-haired woman whose curvaceous figure is modestly obscured by her attire. As Isabella observes them, her steps slow. There is something unspoken between the pair, a restrained tension that keeps them at the boundary of propriety. Yet, in a fleeting moment, she catches the brush of their fingers, a subtle intertwining that speaks volumes of their bond. The small, stolen intimacy tugs at Isabella's heart, drawing a smile to her lips as she resumes her walk, feeling inexplicably light-hearted. She chooses the long route home along the canal, where the gentle movement of the water and the warm glow of the lowering sun lend the scene a romantic serenity. The tranquil setting fills her with a quiet joy, her face tilted upward to bask in the fading light. As the sun dips below the horizon and the temperature begins to drop, she quickens her pace and makes her way home. After dinner, Isabella shuts the inner shutters of her room, sealing herself in the quiet comfort of her space. She sits at her desk, replaying the day's events in her mind. Rosso suddenly leaps onto the table, startling her. The cat, seeking attention, presses his head into her hand. Smiling, Isabella strokes his fur, then cradles his small head with both hands, planting a soft kiss on the top before gently setting him on the bed. Reaching for her wax tablet, something she hasn't used in some time, Isabella allows her imagination to flow freely. Her stylus moves instinctively, carving words into the surface. What emerges is a reflection of the emotions stirred by the couple she saw earlier. The subtle, charged connection between two lovers. Her words paint vivid images, a man's fingertips brushing softly over a woman's lips after a kiss, a hand trailing down her neck, and a hesitant yet magnetic touch venturing toward forbidden territories. Snapping back to reality, Isabella stares at the completed tablet, her heart pounding in her chest. As she reads her own words, a blush creeps up her cheeks, and she bites her lip in uncertainty. With a quick decision, she picks up the stylus and erases every word. She changes into her sleeping attire, scoops up Rosso, and climbs into bed. Hugging the cat tightly, she strokes him absent-mindedly, while her thoughts linger on the images she had conjured. Staring at the flickering candlelight, she questions herself, uneasy about the sensations and imaginings that overtook her. With a sigh, she blows out the flame, hoping sleep will come quickly to quiet her restless mind. During one of her errands to the market, Isabella passes a small shop selling stationery, ink, quills, paper, parchment, scrolls, and a limited selection of books. She has never paid much attention to such items, as her uncle always provides her with what she needs, and she knows how expensive they are. But today, curiosity draws her closer. The shop's open front, designed to attract passers-by, reveals a shopkeeper busily copying a text, wrapped in a blanket to fend off the cold. Isabella scans the selection, her eyes eventually settling on a familiar title nestled on a shelf behind the man. Tentatively, she asks, "Excuse me, signor, how much for Aesop's fables?" The shopkeeper, barely looking up, glances lazily toward the shelf before returning to his work. "It's too expensive for you, young signora," he replies dismissively. Annoyed, Isabella repeats her question. The man, now visibly exasperated, finally responds, "That edition costs 120 soldi." Isabella's jaw drops at the mention of the price, stunned that a book she owns could be worth so much. "I already have this book," she blurts out. Then, her curiosity piqued further, asks, "How much for the others on the shelf?" The shopkeeper pauses his writing to cast a skeptical glance her way. "If you already have it, why are you asking?" he grumbles. "I don't know," Isabella admits. "I have several books. Maybe I would like to trade them." With an incredulous smirk, the man turns toward his small collection of books, counting about 20 volumes. "Let's see," he begins. "The Almanacs, 85 soldi. Donatus's Ars Grammatica, 190 soldi. The Arthurian Tales, 320 soldi. I've got an illuminated version of Articella for 550 soldi. And at home, I have a complete Aeneid by Virgil, 2,000 soldi." The exorbitant prices leave Isabella speechless. The shopkeeper notices her stunned expression and adds with a smirk, "If you want something more affordable, I've got parchments of sonnets or poetry for 5 to 20 soldi each." Disheartened, Isabella thanks the man and leaves, heading toward the market. Back home, she sits at her desk, resting her chin on her crossed arms. Her eyes drift to her collection of books, neatly aligned, though she already knows the number by heart. 12. Turning the shopkeeper's prices over in her mind, she calculates that the total value of her collection could easily exceed 2,000 soldi, an unimaginable fortune. With that amount, she could afford 2 or 3 houses. The realization pulls her mind in 2 directions. On one hand, she wonders if Vittorio is completely unaware of the value of such treasures. On the other, a darker thought creeps in. Could he have taken advantage of grieving families, trading his services for priceless books in moments of vulnerability? Isabella shakes her head, dismissing the thought. She comforts herself with the belief that her uncle only sought to help those in need during their times of sorrow. Still, the weight of the discovery lingers, leaving her with a new appreciation for the hidden wealth resting on her modest desk. "Hurry up, Isabella! We're running late," Vittorio calls out, his voice carrying into her bedroom. Moments later, the door swings open, and Isabella strides into the living area, her newest dress in earthy tones of brown and dark green perfectly complementing the season, with her silver cross gleaming prominently against the fabric. Handing a ribbon to Vittorio, she sits purposefully on a chair in front of him and requests, "Can you braid my hair?" Vittorio lets out a sigh of mild annoyance as he begins parting her hair. "You know today is Brother Anthony's sermon?" Isabella interrupts with a tone that borders on dismissive. Yes, I know. He's an important figure in our faith, spreading the word of the Bible, and we're lucky to have him." With the ribbon clenched between his teeth, Vittorio mutters, "Exactly. It's a great honor to have him here. His words are famously righteous. They're said to have led hundreds of lost souls back to our Lord in France." Isabella murmurs under her breath, "I'm sure those poor souls were more afraid of the stake than the fires of hell." "What did you say?" Vittorio asks. "Nothing," Isabella replies quickly, her face a picture of innocent deflection. Vittorio shakes his head but continues, tying off the braid neatly with the ribbon. "We're already running late, so you'll have to skip breakfast. Let's go." With a final tug to secure her braid, he straightens up, and as they head out the door, Isabella snatches a piece of bread. The church is overflowing with worshippers, undeterred by the cold that lingers within the stone walls. Such a crowd is unusual outside of major celebrations like Easter or Christmas, but word has spread throughout Padua. Brother Anthony, a renowned young Franciscan cleric, will be delivering the sermon today. Despite the throng, Isabella and Vittorio manage to secure their usual seats at the back of the church. Isabella is captivated by Brother Anthony's sermon. His powerful oratory and deep theological insight draw her in, though she cannot help but notice his striking black hair and refined features. The young cleric's ability to weave narratives that stir the congregation is impressive, even if Isabella recognizes that his rhetoric occasionally veers into manipulation to emphasize his points. It is effective, particularly among the commoners. What truly sets Brother Anthony apart in Isabella's eyes is his unflinching criticism of the bourgeoisie and corrupt politicians, a bold stance that makes him a champion of the downtrodden. His words carry a subtle undertone of rebellion, inspiring hope in those who feel oppressed. When the service ends, the church empties slowly. Brother Anthony and Padre Ugolino linger near the entrance, exchanging pleasantries with parishioners eager to greet the charismatic cleric. As is customary, Vittorio waits until the crowd thins to discuss church matters with the priest. Good morning, Vittorio," Padre Ugolino greets warmly. "Brother Anthony, let me introduce you to our undertaker, a most valued member of our community, and his beautiful niece Isabella, who is now of age to find a suitor." The comment causes a flicker of irritation to cross Isabella's face, but Vittorio responds modestly, "Padre Ugolino is too kind. I am but a humble servant, doing my part." Brother Anthony extends his hand in an unexpectedly familiar gesture and remarks, "Signor Vittorio, your work is often misunderstood, but it is vital. You are an essential thread in God's tapestry, and I wish more people would recognize your worth." Vittorio's face brightens with pride, but Brother Anthony's attention shifts to Isabella. "This is indeed a divine creature," he says, his voice filled with reverence. "Blessed by youth and beauty." Switching to Latin, Anthony draws upon Scripture. The Apostle Paul writes, "Wives, submit yourselves unto your own husbands as unto the Lord." Marriage sanctifies a woman's purpose, allowing her to embody the virtues of obedience and grace. Isabella maintains her composure, her reply smooth and deliberate. In perfect Latin, she responds, "And yet the Scriptures also say, 'Teach me knowledge and good judgment, for I trust your commands.' Is it not God's will that we seek to know him more fully through wisdom and learning?" Brother Anthony hesitates for a moment, his expression sharpening as if assessing her words. "Indeed, but learning is a double-edged sword. As the serpent in Eden tempted Eve with the fruit of knowledge, so too does unchecked ambition lead the soul astray. Women, by their nature, are more vulnerable to such snares." The faintest smile graces Isabella's lips. Yet Eve's downfall gave rise to redemption, through which humanity gained salvation. If God entrusted humanity's fate to a woman's choice, can we not also trust women to wield knowledge with discernment? The sharpness in Brother Anthony's gaze softens into something resembling respect, though his words remain guarded. It is a bold woman who speaks of redemption in such terms, but boldness can stray into pride. Switching back to Italian, Isabella offers a courteous but firm dismissal. Brother Anthony, boldness is a gift when tempered by wisdom. I pray that God grants us all the humility to use his gifts rightly. She dips her head in a final gesture of respect and steps away, her movements measured and dignified. As Vittorio hurriedly concludes his conversation and joins her, Brother Anthony watches her retreating figure with a look of grudging admiration. That Isabella, he remarks to Padre Ugolino, possesses a rare strength, an angel's beauty, but a mind too restless for this world. The priest, far less pleased, responds with a measured silence. Vittorio, buoyed by the encounter, asks, "What were you and Brother Anthony discussing in Latin?" Isabella replies casually, "Matters of salvation and wisdom," Isabella replies, her voice light but her thoughts heavy. "Just a few passages from the Bible I learned with the monk." As she shuts her bedroom door behind her, Isabella leans against it, her mind replaying the verbal sparring. She glances at her trembling hands, uncertain whether it was defiance or exhilaration that caused the reaction.